I got to the outpost around 5:30 in the morning, maybe earlier. Still dark. The kind of dark you don't get in Duluth anymore, or at least not in the neighborhoods where I'd been working. Out here, it was complete. Just my headlights on gravel and then the small wooden building sitting in a clearing that felt too tight, like the pines had decided how much space it deserved and not an inch more. I'd left the apartment yesterday afternoon. Didn't tell anyone I was going, mostly because there wasn't anyone left to tell. The year had been bad. That's probably understating it. I lost the job at the docks in March. Then the landlord sold the building. Then Sarah left. And honestly, I don't blame her for any of it. I was hard to be around, I knew that. So when the Forest Service posting went up for seasonal work in the Boundary Waters, I applied the same day. Quiet sounded good. Predictable sounded better. The truck made a ticking sound after I shut it off. I sat there a minute, hands still on the wheel, looking at the outpost. Single story, old, but maintained. A garage attached to the left side, windows dark. One yellow light above the door. A generator humming somewhere behind the building, steady and kind of annoying already. The clearing couldn't have been more than 40 feet across before the trees started again, and they were close, really close. It felt like they were waiting. I grabbed my duffel from the passenger seat and got out. The air hit me cold, that wet spring cold that gets in your joints. Smelled like pine sap and old snow, even though most of it had melted by now. My boots crunched on the gravel. I walked up to the door and it opened before I could knock. "Lane?" "Yeah," I said. The woman in the doorway was maybe 40, 45. Sandy hair pulled back tight, Forest Service uniform pressed and clean. She looked me over once, quick, then stepped aside. "Lauren Vargas, come in." I followed her inside. The front room was small and cramped, just a desk with a radio set up, a couple of filing cabinets, a coffee maker on a folding table, and a bulletin board covered in maps and printouts. Everything looked used, functional. The walls were that fake wood paneling from the 70s, scuffed along the baseboards. The generator noise was louder in here, vibrating through the floorboards a little. Lauren gestured to the desk. "Paperwork's there. Fill it out, sign the bottom." I dropped my duffel by the door and sat down. Standard stuff. Emergency contact, next of kin, liability waiver. I left the emergency contact blank, signed my name at the bottom and dated it April 7th. She took the clipboard back, scanned it, stopped at the blank line. "No one?" "Not right now," I said. She didn't push it, just filed the papers in one of the cabinets and turned back around. "You eat?" "I'm fine. There's oatmeal in the cabinet if you want it later. We keep basics here, but you'll need to drive into Ely for anything else. 23 miles. Roads paved most of the way." She checked her watch. "I've got about an hour before I need to be at the district office. I'll show you what you need to know." I stood up. "Sounds good." She walked me through the building. Didn't take long. The front room, a back room with 2 cots and a space heater, a bathroom the size of a closet with a sink that dripped. She pointed out the breaker box, the propane hookup, the fire extinguisher mounted by the door. Everything was labeled with strips of masking tape and marker, like someone had tried to make it foolproof and given up halfway. "You'll mostly be doing maintenance and patrols," Lauren said, opening a drawer in the desk and pulling out a spiral notebook. "Log your mileage here. Radio check every morning at 0700, every evening at 1800. Channels marked on the console. If you see campers in restricted zones, you report it. Don't engage unless they're in immediate danger. We had a guy try to play cop last summer and it went badly." "Got it." She led me outside, around the side of the building to the garage. The side door was unlocked. She flipped a switch, and a single overhead bulb came on, flickering twice before it held. The place was packed. Busted canoes leaning against the walls, aluminum ones with dents the size of my fist. Paddles stacked in a wooden rack, half of them warped or cracked. Bear-proof bins piled in the corner, scratched to hell. There was a workbench covered in tools, a pegboard with more tools, A riding mower that looked like it hadn't run in years. Everything smelled like gasoline and mildew. "This all gets sorted eventually," Lauren said. She didn't sound convinced. "For now, just keep the trucks running and the equipment accounted for. If something's missing, log it. If something breaks, log it. Don't try to fix anything electrical yourself." I nodded. It looked like the kind of place that had been held together by people who didn't quite have time to do it right. That was fine. I could work with that. We walked back inside. She poured herself a cup of coffee from the pot, didn't offer me one. I got the sense she was still deciding something about me. "You worked outdoors before?" she asked. "Docks in Duluth. Little bit of everything. Forklifts, freight, some basic repair work." "This isn't that." "I know." She watched me over the rim of her cup. "You're going to be alone a lot. Radio works most of the time, but not always. Cell service is non-existent unless you're halfway to Ely. If something goes wrong, you handle it or you wait for me. Understand?" "Yeah. I need you to actually understand," she said, "not just agree." I met her eyes. "I understand." She set the cup down. "Good." There was something in the way she said it. Not quite worried, but close. I didn't know her well enough to ask. Lauren checked her watch again, then pulled a set of keys off a hook by the door. "Trucks are out back. White F-250, that's yours for patrols. Green Ranger, that's mine. Don't touch it unless I'm not here and there's an emergency. You'll need to check the oil every other day on the F-250. It leaks." "Okay." She held the keys for a second, not handing them over yet. Then she reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a laminated card, maybe 4 inches by 6 inches. It had 8 lines of text on it, numbered. The lamination was scratched and cloudy, like it had been handled a lot. "Read this," she said. I took it. The text was typed, plain font, no header. 1. If you hear someone calling your name after dark and you don't recognize the voice, do not answer. 2. If you find a canoe on land more than a quarter mile from water, mark the location and radio it in. Do not touch it. 3. Do not follow trails that aren't on the map. 4. If you see a fire burning with no smoke, leave the area immediately. 5. Do not enter the lake after sunset for any reason. 6. If you find an abandoned campsite with food still laid out, do not take anything. Mark it and leave. 7. If you see someone walking alone in the woods at night, do not approach them. Report it in the morning. 8. If the radio calls your name and no one is on the other end, turn it off for 1 hour. I read it twice. Didn't say anything. "Those aren't folklore," Lauren said. "They're not games. You follow them exactly." "Okay. I mean it, Lane. I get it." She didn't look satisfied, but she let it go. She handed me the truck keys. "Previous seasonal left mid-shift," she said. "March 22nd. Taped that card to the coffee maker and walked out to his car. Didn't even take his coat." I looked down at the card again. The lamination was peeling at one corner. "He say why?" "No." I waited, but that was all she gave me. "We haven't filled the spot since," Lauren added. "You're it until October." I pocketed the card. It felt heavier than it should have, which was stupid. It was just laminated paper. But standing there in that cramped little building with the generator rattling and the woods pressed up close outside, it felt like something I needed to keep track of. Lauren picked up her coffee again. "Questions?" "Not right now." "Good. I'll be back tomorrow to check in. Radio if you need anything." She grabbed her jacket off the back of the chair and headed for the door. I stood there, keys in one hand, card in my pocket, and watched her truck pull out of the clearing. Then it was just me and the generator in the trees. I took the truck out around 8:30. The white F-250 Lauren had pointed out the night before. Keys were still on the hook where she'd left them. The truck started rough, coughing a couple times before it caught. I let it warm up while I grabbed the spiral notebook from the desk, the mileage log she'd mentioned. Someone had written dates and numbers in tight, slanted handwriting. Last entry was March 22nd, same day the previous guy left. I flipped to a blank page and wrote the date. April 7th. Odometer reading. My initials. The roads were exactly what I expected. Gravel, mostly. Some paved stretches that didn't last long. I drove slow, windows cracked, letting the cold air cut through the cab. It smelled like pine and old upholstery and whatever was leaking under the hood. Oil, probably. Lauren said to check it every other day. I figured I'd do that when I got back. First stop was a trailhead about 6 miles north. Just a pullout with a wooden sign and a narrow path heading into the trees. I parked, got out, walked the first 100 feet or so, checked for downed branches, trash, anything that looked off. There wasn't much. A few boot prints in the mud, recent, maybe a day old. Nobody around now. I went back to the truck and logged it. Trailhead 1, no issues. Moved on. The work was simple. Drive to a spot, get out, look around, write it down. Repeat. I hit 3 more trailheads before noon. One had a fallen birch across the path about 20 feet in, not blocking it completely, just leaning heavy. I made a note to come back with a saw. Another had a fire ring someone had built outside the designated area. I kicked the stones apart and scattered them into the brush. Didn't log that part. Just wrote cleared. There was a portage around 1 that afternoon, a short carry between 2 small lakes. I parked and walked the length of it. Maybe 200 yards, muddy in the low spots, roots sticking up everywhere. No canoes, no gear left behind. I stood at the far end for a minute, looking out at the water. It was still, flat, gray under the clouds. I didn't go near it, didn't even get close to the edge. Rule 5 was in my pocket. I could feel the card through the fabric every time I moved. I drove back and hit 2 more campsites before the lights started changing. Both were empty. One had a fire ring with old coals, cold and damp. The other looked like it hadn't been used in weeks. I logged them both and kept moving. By the time I got back to the outpost, it was late afternoon, maybe 4:30, 5. I parked the truck, checked the oil like I'd planned. It was low. Not bad, but low. I added half a quart from a jug in the garage and wiped my hands on a rag that smelled like rust. Inside, I made coffee and sat at the desk, reviewed the log. 8 stops, no real problems. Routine. I let myself think maybe that's all this would be. Maintenance and mileage. A quiet job in a quiet place. The rules were weird, sure, but I didn't have to understand them. I just had to follow them. I believed that for a few hours. Lauren came back around 6. I heard her truck before I saw it, the engine louder than mine, smoother. She came in without knocking, glanced at the mileage log on the desk, and nodded once. "Good," she said. "Any issues?" "Downed tree on the north trail. I'll clear it tomorrow. Log the time when you do. Already planned on it." She poured herself coffee from the pot I'd made, leaning against the counter. I was sitting in the chair by the desk, flipping through the log again for no real reason. Just something to do with my hands. That's when the radio crackled. Not loud, just a quick burst of static, then a voice. Male. Calm. "Vargas, you copy?" Lauren set her mug down and crossed to the radio in 2 steps. She picked up the handset and pressed the button on the side. "Copy. Go ahead. It's Richmond, county. Got a situation I need a hand with." I stayed in the chair, watched her. She kept her face neutral, but her shoulders shifted, just a little. "What kind of situation?" 2 campers, Slim Lake, supposed to check out this morning, didn't show. Permits are expired. I'm tied up with something else, and that edge of the forest is under your coverage. Figured you'd want to know." Lauren didn't answer right away. She looked at the radio, then at the window. The light outside was fading. Not gone, but thinner, grayer. You try their emergency contact? Left a message. No callback yet. Slim Lake's remote. Could be they just lost track of time. Could be. Richmond's voice stayed level, but there was something under it. Not worry exactly, just awareness. Still need someone to sweep it. Lauren looked at me, held my eyes for a second, then turned back to the radio. I'll send Lane. He'll do a quick pass. Radio back. Appreciated. Let me know what he finds. Copy. She hung the handset back on its cradle and turned to face me fully. You heard that? Yeah. Slim Lake's about 40 minutes west. There's a put-in at the end of Forest Service Road 12. You'll see the sign. She crossed her arms. I want you to check the campsite. Look for gear, canoes, anything that tells you they're still out there or already gone. Don't go into the water. Don't go looking past the immediate area. Just a quick sweep. Got it. And Lane. She waited until I looked at her. Be back before the frogs go quiet. I didn't ask what that meant. I knew what she was saying. Before dark. Before the rules kicked in. How long do I have? She glanced at the window again. Hour and a half. Maybe 2 if you move fast. I stood up, grabbed the keys from the desk. You need a radio? Truck's got one, right? Yeah, channel's preset. You run into trouble, call it in. I'll be here. I nodded and headed for the door. She didn't follow me. Just stayed by the radio, arms still crossed, watching me go. Outside, the air was colder. The sun was behind the trees now, just a pale glow filtering through the branches. I got in the truck and started it up, checked the time on the dashboard clock. 6:18, hour and a half. I put it in gear and pulled out, gravel crunching under the tires. The road west was rougher than the ones I'd been on that morning. Narrower, more curves. The trees pressed in close on both sides and the light kept thinning. I pushed the speed a little, not enough to lose control, just enough to keep ahead of the clock in my head. 40 minutes, she'd said. That left me maybe 20 to check the site and get back before the deadline. Before the frogs went quiet. I didn't know what that meant. Didn't know what happened if I missed it. But the way Lauren had said it, flat, firm, like she wasn't asking, made it clear I didn't want to find out. The road curved left, then right, then straightened out for a quarter mile before curving again. I passed a rusted gate, a faded trail marker, a pullout with no sign. Forest Service Road. 12 appeared on my right, barely visible. Just a break in the trees and a wooden post with a number painted on it. I turned. The road got worse. Potholes, exposed roots, stretches where the gravel had washed out completely. I slowed down, gripping the wheel tighter. The truck bounced and rattled. The light was orange now, thin. The kind that didn't last. I kept driving. The put-in sign for Slim Lake came up on the right about 10 minutes after I turned onto Forest Service Road 12, just a wooden marker with the name burned into it, half tilted. I pulled the truck into the clearing and killed the engine. Dashboard clock read 6:53. I grabbed the flashlight from the glove box. Probably wouldn't need it yet, but the light was thin enough that I figured better to have it. The door groaned when I shoved it open. Outside smelled like wet bark and something sour I couldn't place. The access point was a narrow gravel slope leading down to dark water. No canoes pulled up on shore. No paddles leaning against trees. I walked the perimeter first, checking for drag marks or anything that looked fresh. Nothing obvious. The campsite was about 50 yards east along a worn path. I could see the fire ring from the trail, stones in a loose circle, blackened on the inside. I walked up to it and crouched down, holding my hand over the ashes. Cold. Wet, actually. Probably from last night or the night before. The site itself looked normal enough. Flat patch of dirt where a tent had been, some scuffed boot prints in the mud near the ring, a couple of torn granola bar wrappers half buried under leaves. I picked one up. The wrapper was damp but not disintegrating. Recent, but no tent, No packs, no people. I stood there for a second, scanning the area. Usually when campers overstay, they leave a mess. Gear everywhere, maybe a cooler they forgot, trash piled up. This was clean. Too clean, maybe. Just the fire ring and the wrappers and the flat spot where they'd slept. Then I saw the footprints. They started near the tent spot. 2 sets. Maybe 3. Hard to tell where they overlapped. Boot prints at first, normal tread, but they led off the main path, angling northeast into a stand of cedars that looked dense and uninviting. I walked closer, keeping my eyes on the tracks. The ground sloped down that way, and I could see where it turned soft and dark. Cedar swamp. The prints kept going. I glanced back toward the truck. I could radio Lauren, tell her the site was empty, and head back. That would have been the smart move, the procedural move. But Richmond asked for a sweep, and the prints were right there. I stepped off the path. The ground turned soft almost immediately. Not mud exactly, but that spongy give you get near wetlands. My boots sank a half-inch with every step. The cedars pressed in close, branches low and scraping. I had to duck under a couple. The prints were still visible, fainter now, but there. I followed them, keeping my head down, watching for roots. It got darker under the canopy. The orange light from earlier was mostly gone, just a dull gray glow filtering through. I checked my watch. 7:04. I'd been walking maybe 10 minutes. Not long, but the swamp felt bigger than it looked from the campsite, and the ground kept getting softer. I stopped to catch my breath. That's when I heard it. A whistle, thin and high, almost musical. 3 notes, then a pause, then 2 more. I turned my head, trying to pin down the direction. It came again. Same pattern. It didn't sound mechanical. Didn't sound like wind either, but it didn't match any bird I knew. And I'd spent enough time outside to recognize the usual suspects. Loons, sure. Chickadees. Even the weird squawk of a heron. This wasn't any of those. I waited. The whistle stopped, and then everything else stopped too. The forest went completely still. No rustling, no distant bird calls, no frogs. I hadn't even noticed the frogs until they quit, but now the silence pressed in like a weight. It wasn't peaceful. It was wrong. I felt the hair on my arms stand up under my jacket. The radio on my belt crackled. I jumped, actually flinched. The static was loud in the quiet, sharp and sudden. I grabbed it, thumb on the volume knob, ready to turn it down. Then a voice came through. Trailhead 1, no issues. I froze. That was my voice, my exact voice, the same flat tone I used when I logged the trailhead that morning. Word for word. The static cut back in, then the voice again. Cleared. That was the second stop. The fire ring I kicked apart. My hand was shaking, just a little, but enough that I noticed. I stared at the radio, waiting for it to say something else, but it just hissed static. I let go of the volume knob and pulled the laminated card out of my pocket. The light was bad, fading fast. I tilted the card toward what was left of the sky and squinted at the text. Rule 1. Do not answer unrecognized voices calling your name after dark. Rule 2. Mark and radio in any canoe found on land more than 1/4 mile from water without touching it. Rule 3. Do not follow unmapped trails. I was definitely off trail. That one stung a little. Rule 4. Immediately leave any area with smokeless fire. Rule 5. Do not enter the lake after sunset for any reason. Rule 6. Mark and leave abandoned campsites with food still laid out without taking anything. Rule 7. Report, but do not approach anyone walking alone in woods at night. Rule 8. I stopped. Rule 8 was blank. Not blank like it was never written. Blank like it had been scraped off. The lamination was scratched to hell in that spot, cloudy and rough under my thumb. I could see faint impressions underneath, maybe from the original text, but I couldn't make out the words. I flipped the card over. Nothing on the back. I turned it again, holding it closer. The scratches caught the light. Someone had worked at this, deliberately. Recently, maybe, because the edges of the scrape marks still looked sharp. The radio crackled again. I looked down at it. My own voice came through, quieter this time, but still clear. April 7th. That was the date I'd written in the log. My stomach dropped. I stood there in the swamp with the card in one hand and the radio in the other, and for the first time since I took this job, I understood that Lauren wasn't messing with me. The rules weren't folklore. They weren't some hazing ritual for the new guy. They were real. The whistling started again, closer this time. 3 notes, pause, 2 more. The frogs stayed quiet. I looked down at the card. Rule 8, blank and useless. Rule 1, don't answer voices. But it didn't say anything about your own voice. Rule 3, don't follow unmapped trails. I was already breaking that one. The smart move was to turn around, walk back to the truck, radio Lauren and tell her the site was empty. Go back to the outpost and stay inside until morning. I looked at the footprints in front of me. They kept going deeper into the swamp. I put the card back in my pocket. I kept walking. I grabbed the radio off my belt and pressed the talk button. Static hissed. Lane to outpost, I said. Found the campsite, no people, no gear. Got some tracks heading northeast. Need dispatch to confirm. I released the button and waited. Nothing but static for 3 seconds. Then my own voice came through, flat and clear. Damn it. I stared at the radio. That was me. That was what I'd said this morning when I spilled coffee on my hand at the outpost right after Lauren left. I'd been alone. No one else in the building. I'd said it to myself while running cold water over my knuckles at the sink. The radio crackled again. My voice, quieter this time. Too hot. That was the second thing I'd said, standing at the sink, talking to no one. I lowered the radio and looked at it. The channel dial was still set where Lauren left it. The power light glowed green. Standard Forest Service handset, same kind I'd seen a dozen times at the docks when we coordinated with transport crews. I pressed the button again. Lauren, you copy? Static. I waited 10 seconds. Tried again. This is Lane. Radio check. More static. Then silence. I clipped the radio back on my belt and pulled out the laminated card. Rule 8 was still scraped blank. Rule 1 said don't answer unrecognized voices calling your name after dark. Nothing about your own voice. Nothing about radios playing back things you said hours ago in a locked building with no witnesses. I figured it was interference. Maybe some kind of loop or feedback from the outpost radio. Or someone screwing with me. Another ranger on the same frequency, recording transmissions and playing them back. Hazing the new guy. That happened sometimes. Terry had probably heard stories, passed them along, and now someone thought it'd be funny to spook me on my first real call. Probably. I looked at the footprints ahead of me. They kept going, deeper into the swamp. The whistling had stopped, but the silence stayed. No frogs, no birds, no wind moving through the branches overhead. I should have turned back. Radioed what I found. Empty campsite, cold fire, tracks heading into Cedar Swamp, and let Richmond handle the rest. That would have been procedure. That would have been smart. But if the campers were still out here, if they were hurt or lost or stuck somewhere they couldn't call for help, then I needed confirmation before I bailed. Richmond asked for a sweep. I hadn't swept everything yet. I kept walking. The ground got softer. My boots sank deeper with each step, closer to an inch now. Water started pooling in the prints behind me, dark and still. The cedars pressed tighter, branches scraping across my shoulders and catching on my jacket. I had to duck every few feet. The light kept fading, gray turning to charcoal, shadows blending into trunks until I couldn't tell where one tree ended and another began. The prints stayed visible, just barely. I followed them another 50 yards, maybe more. My watch read 7:12 when I checked it. Then I saw the log. It was thick, maybe 2 feet across, lying horizontal about waist-high between 2 cedars. Moss covered most of it, dark green and damp, and on top of the log, folded in a neat stack, were clothes. I stopped walking. 2 shirts, 2 pairs of pants, socks rolled into tight balls and placed on top, all folded with creased edges, the kind of precision you'd see in a store display or a military footlocker. The colors were muted, gray, brown, dark blue, but the fabric looked clean. No mud, no tears. Next to the stack, lined up on the log in a perfect row, were 2 pairs of boots, not tossed, not kicked off, lined up. Side by side, laces tucked inside, toes pointing the same direction. I stood there and stared at them. People don't fold their clothes in the woods. They don't line up their boots. If you're cold, you put more on. If you're hot, you strip down and leave things where they fall. If you're in trouble, if you're drowning or hypothermic or panicking, you don't stop to make neat stacks. This didn't fit anything I knew. I stepped closer. The boots were hiking boots, both pairs, different brands. One set looked newer, the other scuffed and worn. No water inside them that I could see, no blood, no obvious damage. I crouched next to the log and looked at the clothes. The top shirt had a small logo on the chest, a mountain outline, some kind of outdoor brand I didn't recognize. The fabric was dry. I reached out, then stopped. Rule 6. Don't take anything from abandoned campsites with food still laid out. There was no food here, but I didn't know if taking meant touching, and I didn't know if clothes counted the same way coolers or packs would. I pulled my hand back and stood up. That's when the whistling started again. 3 notes, high and thin. Pause. 2 more notes. It came from farther out, past the log, deeper into the swamp where the cedars got so thick I couldn't see more than 10 feet ahead. I froze. The whistling repeated, same pattern, same pitch, and I felt my mouth start to open. Felt the reflex kick in. Someone's calling, you answer. That's what you do. You respond. I clamped my jaw shut and held my breath. The whistling came again. Closer this time, I thought. Or maybe the same distance. I couldn't tell. Sound moved weird out here with all the trees and the water, and the stillness pressing in from every direction. I didn't answer, didn't move. Just stood there next to the folded clothes and the lined-up boots, while my heart hammered against my ribs. After 10 seconds, the whistling stopped. I waited another 20, counting in my head, then turned around and started walking back the way I'd come. The light was nearly gone now. I pulled the flashlight off my belt and clicked it on. The beam cut through the dark in a narrow cone, showing me roots and mud, and the faint impressions of my own boot prints, heading back toward the campsite. Except they weren't just my prints anymore. I stopped and aimed the light at the ground. Bare feet, not boots, feet, human-shaped toes and heel and arch, pressed into the soft mud in a clean outline, all the same size. No variation, and they weren't scattered or wandering. They ran in a perfectly straight line, one after another, like someone had walked a tightrope through the swamp. I swept the flashlight left and right. My boot prints were still there, uneven and angled, showing where I'd stepped around roots or adjusted my path to avoid deeper water. But the bare footprints cut straight through, ignoring obstacles, not deviating an inch. I thought about Rule 4. Leave immediately if you find a smokeless fire. This wasn't fire, but it felt close enough, wrong enough. I angled left, away from the line of prints, and started walking faster. The ground sloped upward slightly. I figured if I kept moving west, I'd hit the main path eventually, or at least get back to higher ground where I could orient myself and find the truck. But after 30 feet, the ground curved. Not a sharp turn, just a gradual bend that pulled me back toward the prints. I corrected, angling farther left. The ground curved again. I tried going right. Same thing. The swamp kept bending, kept guiding me back until I was walking parallel to the line of bare footprints, close enough that my flashlight beam caught them in the edge of its arc. I kept walking. Didn't have another choice. My boots squelched in the mud. Water seeped over the edges and soaked into my socks. The cedars scraped my jacket. The flashlight beam bounced with each step. Then the frogs stopped. All of them, at once. And the insects, and the faint rustle of leaves, and the distant creak of branches settling. Every small noise, every background hum I hadn't even realized I was hearing, gone. Complete silence. I froze. My breath sounded loud. My heartbeat sounded louder. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears, the faint creak of my jacket when I shifted my weight. Nothing else. Panic hit me like cold water. Not the slow, creeping kind. The kind that locks your chest and makes your legs want to run before your brain catches up. I ran. Didn't think about it. Didn't plan a route. Just turned toward where I thought the campsite was and bolted, boots pounding through the mud, flashlight jerking wildly as I shoved branches out of the way and stumbled over roots and kept moving. The whistling started again. 3 notes. Pause. 2 notes. But it didn't get louder, didn't get softer. Didn't fade as I ran or grow as I got closer to wherever it was coming from. It just stayed the same, constant, even, right there. Inside my head, I kept running. My lungs burned, my legs ached. The flashlight beam swung across trees and mud and darkness, and I didn't stop, didn't look back, didn't slow down until I saw the clearing ahead, and the faint shape of my truck and the last pale glow of dusk bleeding through the branches overhead. I made it back to the outpost just after dusk. Drove faster than I should have on those washed-out roads, but I didn't care. My socks were soaked through, my hands were shaking, and the whistling was still in my head even though it had stopped somewhere around the time I hit pavement. The white F-250 slid a little when I braked in the clearing. Gravel kicked up under the tires. I cut the engine and sat there for maybe 10 seconds trying to get my breathing under control. The generator hummed behind the building. Same yellow light above the door. Everything looked normal. Lauren's truck was parked next to mine. I grabbed my flashlight and the radio, still clipped to my belt, and got out. My boots squelched when I walked. Water had gotten in over the tops somewhere in the swamp. I didn't remember when. The door wasn't locked. I pushed it open and stepped inside. Lauren was sitting at the desk with a green 3-ring binder open in front of her. Maintenance logs, probably. She had a pen in one hand and a mug of coffee in the other. She glanced up when I came in, nodded once, and went back to writing something in the margin. Like it was a normal night. Like I hadn't just run out of a swamp that kept bending me back toward bare footprints that didn't make sense. I stood there, dripping on the floor. "Close the door," she said without looking up. I did. Then I walked over to the desk and set the flashlight down next to the radio. My hand was still shaking a little. I shoved it in my pocket. Lauren kept her pen and closed the binder. She set it aside and leaned back in the chair, looking at me for the first time. Her face was calm. Tired maybe, but not surprised. "You made it back," she said. "Yeah. Good." I waited for her to ask what happened. She didn't. She just picked up her coffee and took a sip, watching me over the rim of the mug. I figured I'd just say it. The campsite was empty. I started. No tent, no gear. Fire ring was cold, but there were tracks heading northeast into the swamp, so I followed them. Lauren set her mug down, but didn't say anything. Found a stack of clothes on a log about halfway in. I continued. Folded. 2 sets. Boots lined up next to them. Clean, dry. No one around. Still nothing from her. Just that same steady look. Then I heard whistling, I said. 3 notes, pause, 2 more. Kept repeating, and the frog stopped. Everything stopped. It got quiet in a way that didn't feel right. Lauren nodded once. Small movement. I tried to radio you, I said, and my voice came out a little harder than I meant. Twice. Maybe 3 times. But the radio didn't transmit. It just... I stopped, then made myself finish. It played my voice back to me. Things I'd said earlier today when I was alone, at the outpost, this morning. I waited for her to tell me I was wrong, that I'd imagined it or misheard static or hit the wrong button. She didn't. And you kept walking anyway, she said. It wasn't a question. For a bit, I admitted. Then I found bare footprints, running in a straight line through the swamp. Didn't curve, didn't go around anything, just straight. And when I tried to move away from them, the ground kept pulling me back. Lauren picked up her pen and tapped it once against the desk. Soft click. That's when you left, she said. Yeah. Smart. I pulled out the laminated card from my pocket and set it on the desk between us. Rule 8's been scraped off. I know. You gave it to me like that. I did. My jaw tightened. You could have mentioned it. Would have sounded crazy, she said. You needed to see the rest first. I didn't have an answer for that. She was probably right. Lauren picked up the card and held it up to the desk lamp, tilting it so the light caught the scratches. The rules came from repeated incidents, she said. Flat, matter of fact. People kept running into the same problems, same patterns. So the service started writing them down, codifying what worked and what didn't. Who wrote them? Different people over the years, rangers, contractors, whoever lasted long enough to notice. And Rule 8? She set the card back down. Used to say something different. Got changed last year, then changed again in March. Now it's blank. Why? Because following it made things worse, Lauren said, and not following it made things worse. So we stopped printing it entirely. That didn't make sense. I told her so. Doesn't have to make sense, she said. Just has to keep you alive. I sat down in the folding chair across from her. My boots left wet prints on the floor. The radio, I said. What happens if I'd kept using it? After it played my voice back? Lauren's expression didn't change, but something tightened around her eyes. You'd invite it in, she said. Whatever's out there listening. You'd be confirming it got your attention, that you heard it. That counts as answering. Rule 1. Don't answer unrecognized voices calling your name after dark. It was my voice, I said. Doesn't matter. Wasn't you saying it? Fair point. The campers, I said. Richmond's 2 people. You think they're gone? Probably. Gone where? Doesn't matter, Lauren said again. She leaned forward and rested her forearms on the desk. Slim Lakes had disappearances for decades, longer maybe. County keeps it quiet. Forest Service keeps it quiet. We mark the zones, restrict access during high seasons, and tell people it's about wildlife protection or erosion. But it's not. No. I looked at the rule card still sitting between us. And it's not just the swamp. No, Lauren said. It's the whole area. Swamp's the worst of it, but things happen all over. Trails that don't stay where you left them. Voices in the trees. Canoes that show up on land miles from any water. She paused. And sometimes things come here, to the outpost. That made my stomach drop a little. Rule 6, Lauren said, pulling the card closer and tapping it with one finger. Don't take anything from an abandoned campsite with food still laid out. That one's about the tunnel. I blinked. What tunnel? Under us, she said. CCC built it back in the 30s. Utility access or storage, maybe. Records aren't clear. It runs under the outpost and connects to a few other spots in the forest. Got bricked off decades ago after someone went down there and didn't come back right. Didn't come back right, I repeated. Came back different, Lauren clarified. Wrong enough that they sealed it and stopped talking about it. And the storm door, I said, remembering the back room. The one in the floor. Leads to the stairwell, Lauren confirmed. Goes down to the tunnel. We keep it latched. Don't open it. Don't go near it if you can help it. Why not just seal it completely? Tried that, she said, twice. Door gets pried open from below within a week, so now we just latch it and leave it alone. I didn't like that. Didn't like any of it. And Rule 6, I said slowly, taking things from a campsite. That invites something up? Yeah. You take something that was left as an offering, food, gear, clothes. You're accepting a trade. And trades go both ways. Something comes looking to complete the exchange. The folded clothes on the log. I hadn't touched them, hadn't taken anything. Good. Lauren stood and walked over to the coffee maker. She poured herself a refill, then glanced back at me. You want some? Yeah. She grabbed a second mug from the shelf and filled it, handed it over. I wrapped both hands around it, even though I didn't feel cold. Just needed something to hold. There's scratches around the storm door latch, Lauren said quietly. Fresh ones. Noticed them this morning. I looked up at her. And your card, she continued, nodding toward the laminated sheet on the desk. Rule 8. You see the indentations? I picked it up and held it close, tilted it under the light the way she had. There were faint impressions in the cloudy plastic where the scraping was deepest. Shapes, maybe letters. I couldn't make them out. Something was pressed there, Lauren said, from the other side, after it got erased. My hands tightened on the card. What was Rule 8? I asked. Lauren took a sip of coffee. Didn't answer right away. It changed, she said finally. Used to be about the tunnel. Then it was about the radio. Then it was about names. Every time we updated it, something adjusted, got smarter, worked around it. So you stopped writing it down. We stopped giving it a target, she corrected. Rule's still there. We just don't define it anymore. Makes it harder for anything to twist. I set the card down, rubbed my face with both hands. Headlights swept across the window. Lauren turned. I stood up fast enough that the chair scraped. A vehicle pulled into the clearing, engine low and smooth. Not a truck, a squad car. Terry Richmond. He parked next to Lauren's truck and cut the engine, but left his door open when he got out. No lights, no siren. Just his flashlight in one hand and the other resting on his belt near his sidearm. He didn't walk to the door. He stood next to his car and scanned the tree line. Slow sweep from left to right, then back again. Lauren opened the door and stepped out. I followed. Richmond, she called. He turned, nodded once. Then he finally walked over, boots crunching on gravel, eyes still flicking toward the trees every few seconds. Vargas, he said. Lane. Campers didn't turn up, Lauren said. Figured. Richmond stopped a few feet from the door. He looked at me. You go out to Slim Lake? Yeah. Find anything? Campsite was empty, I said. Clothes on a log in the swamp. No people. Richmond's jaw worked for a second. Then he nodded. County's got a file, he said. Quiet one. Slim Lake disappearances going back to the 70s. Maybe earlier. We don't advertise it. Lane heard the whistling, Lauren said. Richmond's eyes snapped to me. 3 notes? Pause? 2 more? Yeah. He exhaled through his nose. I've heard it, he said. Twice. Once when I was new. Once last year during a search and rescue that didn't turn into a rescue. You tell anyone? Lauren asked. Who'd believe me? Richmond said. He finally stepped inside. I moved back to let him pass. He stood near the desk, hands on his hips, still looking tense. We putting this one in the file? Probably, Lauren said. Families ask questions. They always do. Richmond didn't argue. He looked tired. We should hold position till dawn, Lauren said. Keep the lights on. Stay inside. Lane's back. The site's been checked, and there's nothing we can do tonight that won't make it worse. Richmond nodded. I'll stay. Radio it in as a sweep in progress and file the report tomorrow. Good. That's when the generator coughed. Just once. A wet, rattling sound from behind the building. The overhead light flickered, dimmed, came back. We all stopped moving. Then 3 slow knocks echoed from somewhere behind the outpost. Deliberate, evenly spaced. 1, 2, 3. Richmond's hand dropped to his sidearm. Lauren's face went still. I didn't move. The knocks didn't repeat, but the generator kept running and the light stayed on, and nobody said a word. 3 more knocks came from behind the building. Same spacing, same deliberate rhythm. I kept my eyes on Lauren. She stood just inside the doorway, still as stone, looking at the radio on the desk instead of the back wall. Don't, she said. I wasn't planning on it. Richmond shifted his weight, hand on his sidearm now, fingers resting on the grip. Not drawn, just ready. The knocking stopped. We waited. Then the whistling started. Same pattern I'd heard in the swamp. 3 high notes, pause, 2 more. But this time it was slow, careful. Each note held a beat longer than before, stretching out like someone testing how long they could make the sound last. It came from the same spot as the knocks, directly behind the building, maybe 10 feet from the back wall. Richmond drew his sidearm, didn't point it anywhere, just held it low at his side. How close is the generator? He asked. 20 feet past the corner, Lauren said. Other side. The whistling continued, same pattern on repeat. I counted 4 cycles before it stopped again. My chest felt tight. I kept trying to breathe normal, but my lungs wouldn't fill all the way. The problem was the storm door. Lauren said they latched it, but couldn't seal it completely because something pried it open from below every time they tried. She'd seen fresh scratches on the latch this morning. That meant it was already compromised, already a weak point. I could fix that. Screws, metal plate, something heavy on top if I had to. I knew how to make things stay shut. I'm going to secure the back door, I said. Lauren turned her head. Lane, it's already loose, I said. You told me. I can pin the latch. Richmond looked at me, then at Lauren. He's right, Richmond said. If something's working it open, we need it locked down. Lauren's jaw tightened. She didn't answer right away. Fast, she said finally. Don't go alone. I moved toward the door. Richmond followed, flashlight in his left hand, sidearm still in his right. Lauren stayed near the desk, one hand on the radio like she was anchoring herself to it. I stepped outside first. The air hit cold and sharp. The clearing looked the same as before. 3 vehicles parked in a loose row, trees pressing close on all sides, generator humming steady behind the building. The yellow light above the door threw long shadows across the gravel. I walked toward the garage. Richmond stayed 2 steps behind me, scanning the tree line with his flashlight. The beam swept left, right, paused on a gap between 2 pines, moved on. The garage side door was still unlocked. I pulled it open and the overhead bulb flickered on, washing everything in weak yellow light. I grabbed a pry bar from the pegboard and a small box of deck screws from the workbench. 2.5 inches long, coarse thread. Good for biting into old wood. Richmond waited in the doorway, watching the clearing. Got it, I said. He stepped back and I pulled the door shut behind me. We walked around the side of the building toward the back. The generator sat on a concrete pad near the far corner, rattling and humming, exhaust pipe coughing faint blue smoke into the dark. The back of the building had no windows, just flat wood siding, peeling paint, and the storm door set into the ground about 6 feet from the wall. It was angled metal, same kind you'd see on old farmhouses or basements. Rusted hinges, heavy latch with a padlock loop. I stopped 3 feet away. The door was open. Not all the way. Just an inch. Maybe less. But definitely not flush with the frame. Richmond saw it too. He raised his flashlight and the beam hit the gap, showing darkness underneath and scratches around the latch plate where something had scraped the paint down to bare metal. Fresh, Richmond said quietly. I crouched next to it. The latch was still in place, padlock missing. The gap was even along the whole edge, like the door had been pried up carefully and left that way on purpose. Lauren said taking things from an abandoned site was a trade, an invitation. She said something came looking to complete the exchange. I hadn't taken anything, not the clothes, not the boots, but somebody had, or something had been left out here, and somebody before me, maybe the last ranger, maybe someone else, had picked it up. Didn't matter now. I set the pry bar down and pulled the door shut. It moved easy, no resistance, just a faint scrape of metal on metal. When it settled into the frame, the latch dropped into place with a soft click. I picked up the first screw and lined it up with the latch plate. The metal was old and pitted, but still solid. I drove the screw in by hand at first, then used the pry bar as leverage to twist it the rest of the way. The threads bit into the wood underneath, pulling the plate tight against the frame. I added a second screw on the other side of the latch, then a third at the top edge of the plate. Richmond stood behind me, flashlight steady on the door, not saying anything. I drove the fourth screw in. The metal squealed faintly as it compressed against the wood, and then the frogs started. All at once, loud and normal, and everywhere, like someone had flipped a switch. The sound rushed in from all directions, chirping, croaking, overlapping calls from the trees and the wet ground past the clearing. I heard branches rustling, an owl somewhere far off, wind moving through the pines. The forest came back. I sat back on my heels, breathing hard. My hands were shaking a little, but I didn't care. I'd fixed it. Richmond exhaled slow. That did it. I stood, wiping my hands on my pants. The storm door stayed shut. The latch held. The frogs kept going. For a second, I felt solid, like I'd done the right thing at the right time and it worked. Then the radio inside crackled to life. We both heard it, loud enough to carry through the back wall. Lauren's voice came through first, flat and instructional, exactly the way she'd sounded an hour ago when she explained Rule 6. Taking offered items, food, gear, clothes, constitutes accepting a trade. Something comes looking to complete the exchange from below. Static hissed. Then Richmond's voice. I'll stay till dawn. We'll hold position and I'll radio for dogs in the morning. More static. Then my voice. Clear and calm and wrong. I'm going to open the storm door and go down to get the campers. I froze. I hadn't said that. Not out loud. Not even in my head. Richmond turned toward me, flashlight dropping to point at the ground between us. His face was hard to read in the low light, but his posture changed, shoulders squared, weight shifted forward. He'd heard it. He'd heard my voice say I was going down into the tunnel, and he believed it. Lauren spoke from the doorway without turning around. The door functions like a pressure valve. I looked at her. She stepped inside, shut the door behind her, and continued. You seal it completely. Whatever's down there has to find another way in. Usually through familiar voices. People trust voices. The radio crackled again, more static. Then Richmond's voice played back something I hadn't heard him say yet. I'm going in. Someone needs help. Richmond shifted his weight. He turned his head slightly toward the back hallway. I said, Richmond. He didn't answer. He took a step toward the hallway. Lauren said his name too. Firm. No panic in it. Richmond stopped but didn't look at us. He stared at the hallway entrance, head tilted like he was listening to something we couldn't hear. "There's someone down there," he said. His voice was flat, calm, wrong. I moved between him and the hallway. "There's not." "I hear them." Richmond's hand came off his sidearm. He stepped forward again. "They're calling my name. They need help." I grabbed his arm. He pulled against me, not hard but steady, persistent. I tightened my grip and yanked him back a step. Richmond twisted, trying to angle past me. He wasn't fighting exactly, more like he was walking through me, through the space I occupied. His eyes stayed fixed on the hallway. I pulled harder. He resisted with the same unnatural persistence. No frustration, no anger, just steady forward pressure, like the stairwell had leverage inside his head and was reeling him in. The whistling started again. Faint, coming from the back of the building. 3 notes. Pause. 2 more. I felt it in my teeth, in my jaw. The pattern looped and I wanted to whistle it back, just to finish it, just to make it stop pulling at the edges of my brain. I opened my mouth. Lauren snapped, "Lane!" I bit down on my cheek, hard, tasted copper immediately. The pain cleared my head enough to shut my mouth and keep it shut. Richmond pulled again, leaning his whole body toward the hallway. I held on, but he was heavier than me and he wasn't stopping. Lauren crossed the room fast. She shoved the laminated card at me, jabbing it toward my chest. "Rule 8, she said. I looked down at the card. Rule 8 was still blank, scraped clean. Lauren flipped the card over. The back was blank too, but she angled it toward the desk lamp and held it under the light. Faint pencil marks showed through the lamination, pressed hard enough to leave indentations. I squinted and tilted the card. The words were barely visible. Someone had written them on another sheet of paper, pressed it against the back of the card, and traced over the letters hard enough to transfer an impression. It said, "You cannot seal the door. Feed it light." I read it twice. Lauren pulled the card back and pointed at the desk. "Road flares," she said. "Garage, top shelf past the workbench." I let go of Richmond. He took 2 more steps toward the hallway before Lauren grabbed his other arm and hauled him back. "Lane," she said. "Now." I ran. The garage was cold. I hit the light switch and the bulb flickered on. I went straight to the back shelf, shoved past a coil of chain and a cracked toolbox, and found the road flares. Box of 12, old but sealed. I grabbed the box and turned to go. The med kit hung on the wall by the door. Red canvas bag with a white cross. I yanked it down, unzipped it, and dug through gauze and tape until I found the zip ties. 4 of them, black plastic, heavy duty. I ran back. Inside, Richmond was on his knees. Lauren had both hands on his shoulders, holding him down. He wasn't struggling hard, but he kept twisting his head toward the hallway, trying to listen. "They're hurt," he said, quiet, certain. I dropped the flares and the medkit on the desk. "We need to cut the power." Lauren looked at me. Radio's still pulling him. I nodded. "Generator. Kill it, and the radio dies." She hesitated. "We lose lights." "Flashlights work fine." Lauren stood, keeping one hand on Richmond's shoulder. "Do it fast." I grabbed my flashlight off the desk and went back outside. The generator sat on its concrete pad, rattling and humming. I crouched next to it and found the fuel valve, turned it clockwise until it stopped. The engine coughed twice, sputtered, and died. The lights inside went out. I waited 5 seconds. The clearing stayed quiet. No whistling, no knocks. I went back inside. Lauren had her flashlight out. Beam pointed at the ceiling to spread the light. Richmond was still on his knees, but his head had stopped twisting. He blinked slowly, like he was waking up. "What?" he started. I didn't wait for him to finish. I pulled his arms behind his back and looped the first zip tie around his wrists, pulled it tight. He jerked once, testing it, then went still. "Lane, what the hell?" "You were walking toward the tunnel," I said. I added a second zip tie for good measure. "You don't remember." Richmond's breathing picked up. He twisted his head to look at me, eyes wide. "I heard. I know." Lauren crouched in front of him. "You're staying here. Don't fight it." Richmond stared at her. Then he nodded once. Small. Tight. I stood and grabbed the box of road flares off the desk. Lauren said, "You're going out there." "Yeah." "You open it more than a crack, it'll come through." "I know." She handed me the pry bar I'd left by the door. Narrow but bright, that's it. I took the pry bar and the flares and went back outside. The storm door was still latched, screws holding it down. I set the flares on the ground and wedged the pry bar under the first screw head. It came out easier than it went in. 3 turns and it dropped into the dirt. I moved to the second screw, then the third, then the fourth. The latch lifted free. I pulled one flare from the box, twisted the cap, and struck it. Red flame hissed to life, bright enough to hurt my eyes in the dark. I set the flare on the ground next to me and gripped the storm door handle. Pulled it up slowly. The door cracked open 1/2 inch. Cold air rolled out. Wet stone smell. Mineral and old. No mold, no rot. Just stone and water and something underneath I didn't have a name for. I pulled the door another inch. The hinges creaked. The stairs were visible now, concrete, steep, descending into darkness. Bare feet stood on the steps. 4 pairs, maybe 5, lined up in a row, toes pointing up toward me. No legs visible past the ankles, just feet. Behind them something moved. I couldn't see it clearly. The firelight didn't reach that far. But I saw the shape. One body, too many joints. It folded and unfolded wrong, like it was deciding how to arrange itself. I grabbed the lit flare and dropped it through the gap. It tumbled end over end, spinning red light across the walls and landed on the steps. The feet didn't move. I lit a second flare, dropped it, then a third. The stairwell filled with red light. Shadows jerked and twisted. The thing behind the feet shifted backward, joints bending in places that didn't make sense. I kept the door narrow. 2 inches. No more. I reached for the fire extinguisher I'd grabbed from the garage on my second trip out, pulled the pin, aimed the nozzle through the gap and squeezed the handle. White foam sprayed into the stairwell, coating the steps, the walls, the feet. The feet jerked once but didn't retreat. I emptied the extinguisher, tossed it aside. The fuel lantern sat next to me. Old camp lantern, half full. I unscrewed the cap, stuffed a rag into the opening, and lit the rag with the flare. I counted to 3, threw it. The lantern hit the steps, shattered, and flames spread fast. The foam caught. The fuel caught. Light rolled through the stairwell in a bright, hungry flash. The whistling started. Not the 3-note pattern. All of it at once, layered, overlapping. A dozen voices whistling the same tune in different pitches, collapsing into a wet, unified scream. The feet jerked backward, all of them at once. They slid down the steps, dragging whatever they were attached to with them. The thing behind them folded in on itself and vanished downward. The scream echoed up the stairs, then cut off. Silence. I grabbed the storm door and slammed it shut, dropped the latch, drove the screws back in, one by one, pry bar squealing against metal. The last screw sank flush. I sat back on my heels. My hands were shaking. My mouth tasted like blood and smoke. The door stayed shut. By morning, Slim Lake sounded normal. I heard it on the radio. Lauren had the generator running again by 6. County called in at 6:45. Search crews found the 2 campers alive near the south access point. Both were hypothermic, dehydrated. No memory of the last 2 days. Richmond left at dawn. Didn't say much. Lauren cut the zip ties off his wrists and he walked straight to his squad car and drove out. Lauren stayed until noon. She made coffee. Didn't talk about the tunnel. Didn't talk about the feet or the whistling or what I'd seen on the steps. She made a call around 10. I heard her on the radio talking to someone named Gary Ryan, contractor. She told him to bring a truck, a pump, and enough concrete to fill a utility tunnel. Gary showed up 2 days later. Took him 4 hours to pump the stairwell full. He didn't ask questions, didn't go down to look. Just ran the hose, filled it to the top, and left. The concrete set hard. Lauren checked it herself 3 days after that. Said it was solid all the way down. Richmond filed for a transfer the following week. I heard it from Lauren when she came by for a supply run. He requested county dispatch duty, desk work, no field calls, no search and rescue. They approved it. I stayed the season. Didn't have anywhere else to go. Didn't have a reason to leave. The outpost needed someone and I needed the work. That was enough. I kept the laminated card on me, front right pocket, always. 2 weeks after Gary poured the concrete, I sat at the desk with a black permanent marker and rewrote Rule 8 on the blank space. It said, if the tunnel door is pried open, do not seal it. Feed it light and fire until it retreats. Then lock it, do not seal it. I pressed hard enough to make the ink thick, dark, permanent. Nobody was going to scrape this one off. I clipped the card back to the bulletin board next to the radio. If another ranger came through, they'd see it. They'd know. The frogs kept calling every night. The generator kept running. The trails stayed where they were supposed to be. I did my patrols, logged my mileage, followed the rules, and I didn't go near the back of the building unless I had to.